Hey guys, tonight we set sail on a voyage so ridiculous, so wildly avoidable, that you'll wonder if Sinbad actually wants to suffer. The second voyage of Sinbad isn't just about exotic lands and hidden treasures. It's about the kind of poor decision-making that only immense boredom and too much money can inspire. Picture this. You're lounging in a luxurious house in Baghdad, sipping sweet sherbet, listening to birds chirp under your date palms, and instead of enjoying retirement, you say, "You know what sounds fun? Almost dying again." So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And, hey, let me know in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it there right now? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're back in Baghdad after the first voyage. Pockets heavy with gold and head spinning from everything you saw. And for a while, it's nice. You host dinners, you buy fancy carpets, you even commission a small marble fountain that spits pomegranate juice, because why not? But soon, the silence starts to echo. The stories lose their thrill when repeated. Your neighbors grow weary of hearing about giant birds and underwater cities. And you get restless. Historians still argue whether the real Baghdad of this era, during the Abbasid Caliphate, was as wealthy and cosmopolitan as these tales suggest. But let's just say, if you lived there, your only real enemy was boredom. And so, with that deep, gnawing itch to feel the wind of unknown places in your face, you do what any sane person absolutely would not. You load up another ship. You invest in merchandise, spices, rare woods, silk, glass beads, even a crate of singing mynah birds, because apparently, that's a business strategy now. You hire a new crew, most of them are salty, sunburned, and suspicious of rich guys playing sailor. But they take your gold, and soon you're off again, sails snapping under a red dawn. The sea is gentler this time, for a few weeks. The waves rock you like a cradle, and you dare to think. Maybe this one will be smooth sailing. You get cocky, you hum songs, you plan expansion. You think about opening a branch office in Serendib or China, and then the sky darkens. It starts with the birds. Hundreds of them fleeing inland. Then the wind changes, and the clouds gather like an army with a grudge. The water turns from sapphire to slate, and suddenly your ship feels very, very small. The storm hits with the fury of a god who's had a bad week. Lightning cracks open the horizon. The masts groan like dying beasts. Your crew screams over the howling wind as waves smash the deck like fists. A historical side note here. Indian Ocean monsoons were, and still are, terrifyingly powerful. They could snap the largest ships of the day like kindling. By the time the sky clears, your ship is gone. You wake up clinging to a piece of floating timber, half deaf from the storm and half blind from salt spray. Around you, debris bobs lazily in the sun. No other survivors are in sight. You spot a bit of sailcloth, a barrel, and, miraculously, a crate of figs that somehow stayed intact. You paddle toward them with the desperation of a man who's just remembered he doesn't know how to fish. Eventually, you reach land. You crawl onto a rocky beach, your limbs shaking. The sun feels like a furnace now, blistering the skin it had just soaked. The island is unfamiliar, dense forest, strange cries echoing from the trees, and absolutely no sign of civilization. You rest beneath a crooked palm tree, trying not to count your regrets. But even as your body protests, your mind flickers with curiosity. Quirky fact for the night. Some ancient navigators believed certain islands were alive, literally, breathing, moving, and vanishing when not observed. You wonder, deliriously, if this is one of those. You begin to explore. The forest is alive with chittering insects and bizarre birds. You spot fruits you've never seen. Blue-skinned bananas, crimson oranges, and nuts the size of your fist. You avoid them. Last time you trusted unfamiliar fruit, you hallucinated that a turtle was your uncle for 3 days. You hike inland, desperate for water. Eventually, you stumble upon a small stream, its banks marked with the footprints of something large. Not camel large, more like run now large. You drink quickly. Every snapping twig sets your nerves on fire. Night falls too soon. You build a crude shelter from palm fronds and driftwood. As stars pierce the canopy above, you try to sleep. But the forest hums with life, and your dreams are full of towering shadows and the thump, thump, thump of footsteps too big for anything human. In the middle of the night, you wake to a sound. Loud, crunching, like boulders being ground underfoot. You freeze. Something is moving nearby. And not just something. Something big. You press yourself against the trunk of a tree. Barely breathing, the crunching stops. A new sound replaces it. A deep, rumbling snore. Because of course, why wouldn't there be a snoring giant? You don't move, not because you're brave, but because your legs have suddenly decided they've had enough of this life. They've retired. Voluntarily. That enormous snore rumbles again, shaking leaves loose from nearby branches. It sounds like a mountain clearing its throat. Slowly, inch by inch, you ease your way up the tree. The bark scrapes your palms, and you mutter silent prayers to every god, saint, and legendary sea turtle you can think of. You climb just high enough to get a glimpse over the brush, and there it is. In the clearing below, illuminated by moonlight, lies something impossible. A creature. A giant, at least 3 times the height of any man. Its single eye is shut tight, the enormous lid fluttering with each breath. One leg twitches in its sleep, crushing a boulder to powder without even trying. Yes, one eye. You've stumbled into a real-life nightmare. A cyclops. Historians still argue whether tales of cyclopes stem from misinterpreted elephant skulls, whose large central nasal cavity might have looked like a single eye socket. But right now, you're not thinking about fossil misidentifications. You're thinking about how not to die before breakfast. You stay in that tree till morning, stomach groaning in protest and legs cramping into knots. When light finally filters through the canopy, you climb down and retreat. Quietly, slowly, with the precision of a cat burglar trying to steal from a bear. You head back toward the beach, and that's when you see them. Survivors. A small group, maybe 6 others, have also washed ashore. One of them is Farid, your overly optimistic spice merchant. He's eating a coconut with a seashell spoon and waving like this is a family picnic. Another, Hakim, is muttering to himself and furiously drawing diagrams in the sand. You reunite, hug, cry a little, then share what little you found. Once everyone's calmed down, you tell them what you saw. No, says Farid. Absolutely not. But then you all hear it, that same thunderous snore, echoing faintly through the trees. Reality sinks in. You are not alone on this island, and your new neighbor is big enough to use you as a toothpick. The group debates your next move. Do you build a raft? Try the inland hills? Hope the Cyclops is vegetarian? A practical reminder here. Many ancient sailors carried rudimentary navigational tools, like astrolabes or camals, but they don't help when your ship is gone, and your situation involves a one-eyed ogre with questionable dining habits. By late afternoon, hunger and heat begin to break morale. You agree to set up camp on the edge of the jungle, close enough to the beach for escape, but just far enough from the giant to avoid becoming dinner. The first night as a group is quiet. Too quiet. Everyone's thinking it, but no one says it. If that thing finds us, we're done. And of course, on night 2, it does. It happens fast. You're asleep, half dreaming of rose pudding and date cakes, when a thunderous roar splits the night. Something massive is crashing through the jungle. You bolt upright. Flames from your small campfire illuminate a monstrous figure, towering, hunched, and moving fast. The Cyclops. Its eye gleams like a silver coin, wild with hunger. It doesn't speak, just snarls, grabs two screaming crewmen, and disappears back into the trees. And just like that, your numbers shrink. The survivors huddle till dawn, shaking, furious, terrified. It's Farid who finally breaks the silence. We kill it. You laugh, then realize he's serious. Hakim starts drawing plans in the sand again. We blind it. That eye is everything. It can't hunt us if it can't see. You nod slowly. We'd need fire, spears, something sharp, and just like that, a plan forms. Not a good plan. Not a plan you would ever recommend, but it's the only one you've got. You spend the next 2 days preparing. Spears are carved from branches. A fire-hardened log is sharpened into a rough pike. You gather dry leaves, oil-soaked cloth from salvaged sails, and build a bonfire near the clearing where the creature sleeps. You bait it with food, fish, fruit. A chicken Farid insists he found just walking around. Then you wait. Quirky historical side note. Ancient Assyrian hunters used similar baiting tactics for big game, including lions, though none of their prey were quite this mythological. Night falls. You crouch behind the bonfire, spear ready. The air smells of oil and smoke. The trees rustle, and then crash. The Cyclops lumbers into the clearing, eye glinting, nostrils flaring. It sniffs, steps closer to the food. At the last possible second, you light the spear. The flame erupts, whoosh, and the sudden light startles the creature. It rears back, and you all rush forward, jamming the flaming tip directly into its single eye. Its roar is indescribable. It thrashes, trees snap. One of your crew is flung aside like a rag doll, but the damage is done. The beast stumbles backward, clutching its scorched face, wailing with a voice that sounds like a temple bell made of agony. It disappears into the forest, smashing everything in its path. You don't sleep that night. None of you do. At dawn, you find its tracks. Massive, erratic, blood-spotted. It's alive, but blind, and very, very far away. For now, we need to leave, you whisper. Now, at sunrise, you're already tying knots with trembling fingers. No one's talking. You all know, the Cyclops may be blind, but it's still out there, still breathing, still capable of smashing your bones like dry twigs if you so much as sneeze in the wrong direction. You gather what you can. Palm trunks are dragged to the beach. Rope is twisted from stripped vines. The figs are gone. Someone panicked and ate them all last night. Probably Farid. And you're down to coconuts, crab meat, and hope. The plan is basic. Build rafts, paddle like madmen, and pray you hit somewhere before you starve or sink. Rafts in the ancient world weren't exactly luxury liners, even with your best MacGyver instincts. What you've got is 6 logs lashed together, with a sail made of ripped tunics and a paddle carved from a food crate. As the tide creeps in, you push off. The raft groans, creaks, and finally begins to drift. You paddle hard, backs burning, arms screaming, salt sprays your eyes. No one dares look back, and for a while it seems like it's working, until you see movement on the shore. The Cyclops is back. It's screaming, flailing, tearing trees from the ground. It can't see you, but it hears the ocean, and it's coming. One of your rafts veers too close to shore and gets smashed between 2 stones hurled blind into the surf. Everyone on it, gone. You paddle harder. Eventually, you make it out of range. The island shrinks behind you until it becomes a green smudge on the horizon. You allow yourself to breathe again. For about 5 seconds, because now you're floating on an open sea with no map, no stars visible through the haze, and no idea where you're headed. Historians still argue whether this part of Sinbad's tale reflects actual Indian Ocean trade route hazards, or if it's a creative cocktail of sailor gossip and folklore. Either way, your situation is suddenly textbook shipwreck survival. You paddle for hours. The sun beats down like punishment. Your lips crack. Your throat burns. The water surrounding you might as well be made of fire, beautiful and useless. Farid passes out. Hakim starts reciting poetry about death and mangoes. And then you see it. Land! It's distant, low, and faint, but unmistakable. You cheer, barely able to form words. Hope returns, stronger than any breeze. With every aching stroke, you move closer. By the time you reach the shore, the sun is dipping low. The island ahead looks promising, lush, green, and most importantly, not home to a one-eyed giant. You haul the raft ashore and collapse into the sand, more salt than man at this point. You've survived. Again, that night, under the stars, you eat roasted crab and sip fresh water from a hidden stream. There's even laughter, jokes, the kind that sound a little hysterical. Sure, but who can blame you? Quirky side note. Some ancient Persian sailors believed islands like this were protected by sea spirits who only allowed passage to the truly lucky or the truly stupid. You're not sure which camp you fall into. The next few days are peaceful. You rest, you gather food, you repair the raft with better materials, bamboo, vines, dried fish bladders as float bladders. You even start to feel confident again. Maybe this voyage won't end with you being eaten or drowned after all. But peace never lasts long with you, does it? Because 3 days in, you notice footprints. Not yours, not Farid's. Barefoot, human, fresh, and many. You freeze, you crouch, you listen. Voices, and then you see them. Figures emerging from the trees. Tall, silent, dressed in simple tunics. At first, they seem curious. They surround you without a word, watching. Blinking slowly. You smile. You try to talk. They don't respond. Then one of them points to you, grins, and mimics a chomping motion with his hands. You glance at Farid. That's probably just a joke, right? It's not. Before you can move, they grab you. Ropes bind your arms. You're dragged inland, deeper into the jungle, to a village where huts rise like teeth from the earth. Smoke curls from pits where something big is cooking. A historical moment. While exaggerated, there were encounters between foreign sailors and isolated tribes during long-distance voyages. And while cannibalism is often misreported or weaponized in travel lore, some oral histories do suggest ritualistic practices involving outsiders. Creepy? Yes. Confirmed? Historians still argue whether these tales were real or just fear-fueled embellishments. You're separated from Farid, thrown into a hut, left alone with nothing but the stink of meat, sweat, and dread. Then they feed you. Not their food. Your food. Sweet fruits, roasted roots, spiced fish. They're fattening you up. You realize it all at once. You're not a guest. You're livestock. Panic rises. You try to break the ropes. No luck. You scream. No one answers. For 2 days, they feed you and watch. You pretend to eat, but secretly spit it out or hide it. You fake weakness. You plot. And finally, when one guard nods off at the door, you act. You lunge. You tackle. You run. You bolt through the jungle, heart hammering in your chest, ropes trailing behind like wings. Every branch tears your skin. Every sound makes you flinch. You don't stop. Not even when the sky goes black. You don't know where you're headed. Only that it's away. Away from huts. Away from fire pits. Away from becoming dinner. You run until your lungs feel like crushed pomegranates. The jungle is alive and furious. Vines try to grab you. Roots trip you. Insects dive bomb your eyes like tiny kamikazes. But you don't stop. Not even when you fall face first into a muddy creek. You crawl out like a swamp ghost, half blind and shaking. Eventually, the sounds of shouting fade. No one's chasing you anymore. Either they gave up, or they've already set the table. You collapse beneath a tree that smells like sour milk and fermented figs. You've never been so grateful for a disgusting plant. You rest there, soaking wet, trembling, and covered in mosquito bites the size of raisins. Somewhere in the distance, a monkey laughs. Yeah, you mutter. Glad someone's having fun. When you finally stand, dawn is breaking. The jungle around you is quiet except for the hum of insects and the soft rustle of wind through leaves. You begin walking with no idea where you're going. Just away. You eat berries that don't look poisonous. Pro tip, if they smell like nail polish remover, don't. Sip water from leaf cups. And try not to cry when you step on a sharp rock barefoot. The path, if you can call it that, leads deeper inland. You stumble across bones, not human, thank the stars, but animal. Big ones. Too big. Spines as long as your forearm. Skulls like upside-down bowls. And then you spot something stranger. A trail, not a path beaten by animals, but a deliberate trail, narrow, winding, and laid with flat stones, half sunken in moss. You follow it, curiosity overpowering common sense, which by now has fully resigned from this job. Historians still argue whether ancient seafarers really found such intricate inland paths on uncharted islands, or if this detail was simply added to lend the story mystery. Either way, it's here, and it's leading you somewhere. After hours of walking, you reach a clearing. At its center is an odd sight. A tall rock slab, tilted like a gravestone, surrounded by heaps of bones. On the slab is a carving, a crude bird, wings outstretched, and beneath it, something that might be an eagle eating a goat, or a goat eating an eagle. Hard to tell, but that's not the weird part. The weird part is the sound. A rhythmic thump, 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 thump. Like distant drums or footsteps. You freeze. From the sky comes a cry so loud, so piercing, it feels like your bones vibrate. You duck instinctively, and then you see it. A bird, a monstrous, titanic bird. Its wingspan must be the size of a mosque dome. Its feathers gleam like burnished obsidian. Its eyes are as yellow as flame. It glides in wide, lazy circles above the jungle, casting a shadow as long as a ship. It's a rock. Yes, that rock. The bird of legends, capable of carrying off elephants for brunch. Quirky aside, the rock, or rook in Arabic, appears in multiple cultural mythologies, from Persian to Indian to Arab. Some scholars suggest it was inspired by exaggerated accounts of eagles from Madagascar or the now extinct Haast's eagle from New Zealand, though that doesn't explain this absolute unit soaring overhead like a feathery god. You don't move. You hardly breathe. But the rock isn't interested in you. It dives with precision into a nearby valley, and then rises again, something large and wriggling clutched in its talons. You decide maybe it's best to avoid anything that can eat a horse like a jelly bean. You retreat carefully, following a smaller trail that loops down toward the sound of running water. There, beside a stream, you rest. You wash your face, drink deeply, and, hallelujah, you spot something familiar floating toward you in the current. It's a barrel. Not just any barrel. A sealed, salt-stained cargo barrel, probably from your ship. Inside, dried dates, a few almonds, and miraculously, a tiny vial of saffron oil. Not exactly a feast, but hey, beats roasted mystery fruit. That night, you build a small fire and boil a leaf stew that tastes like regret with hints of hope. You wrap yourself in damp cloth, close your eyes, and drift into sleep listening to the occasional cry of the rock echoing through the hills. Morning brings fog, but also clarity. You need to get off this island. But how? You don't have a raft, and there are no ships. Then you remember the bones, specifically, diamond-studded bones. Because yes, tucked into the jungle further inland, you find them. Animal remains glittering with embedded stones. Rough, sharp, valuable, you follow the trail of sparkle. Eventually, you arrive at what can only be called the Valley of Diamonds, a canyon floor covered in bones and carcasses, and among them, glittering gems scattered like fallen stars. You've heard stories of this place, where diamonds lie free but guarded by snakes so massive they could unhinge reality. According to folklore, no human can safely enter the valley. But you're Sinbad, and you're also desperate, which means you're about to do something very stupid. You sneak in at dusk, when the snakes, allegedly, retreat to their caves. You move fast, scooping gems into your makeshift bag, the leg of your own trousers, tied shut with vine. You grab 2, 3, 5 handfuls. Then you hear the hiss. It's not a regular hiss. It's a hiss with intention. You don't look, you just run. You burst out of the canyon, trip over a skull, tumble down the slope, and roll to a stop in a patch of thorny bushes. When you sit up, your arms are bleeding, your heart is a drum, and you're still clutching your sack of diamonds like a newborn. Congratulations! You didn't die. Yet, you sit there, breathing like a bellows, thorns poking through your trousers, hair filled with dust and dried leaves. Somewhere behind you in the Valley of Diamonds, the snakes are stirring. You can't see them, but you can feel the weight of their slithering menace, coiled in the shadows like living nightmares. You tighten the knot on your makeshift diamond bag and stand up. Slowly, carefully, every limb sore, every sense screaming that this is not a place to linger. Your next problem, of course, is escape. You've got diamonds now. Fantastic. Congratulations. Try eating one. But with no raft, no ship, and definitely no friendly Uber boat service on this island, your options are slim. That's when you remember the stories. The smugglers, you've heard them whispered about in ports all across Basra and Oman. Merchants who don't walk into the Valley of Diamonds because they've found a better way. They don't risk snakes. They send in the birds. That's right, eagles. Historians still debate whether this technique, throwing meat into a snake-infested valley and letting giant birds retrieve it with diamonds stuck to the flesh, was ever actually used. But hey, you're here now, and weirdly, it kind of makes sense. So you look for clues, eagle nests, old bones, maybe some leftovers from past smugglers. And eventually, you find it. A wide, flat rock stained with old blood, littered with feather tufts and the unmistakable smell of dried meat. This is the launch pad. You gather what you can. Scraps of raw goat from a half-buried carcass. Vine rope. A few fat stones wrapped in cloth. Carefully, you sew diamonds into the meat. Yes, sew. You're now a jeweler and a butcher. You wait, and wait. Then, shadow. A rock glides down. Wings spread wide, casting a massive dark ripple across the ground. It lands hard, grabbing one of the meat bundles in its claws and shooting back into the air with shocking grace. You squint, far above. The eagle drops its catch onto a distant cliff where, get this, a group of men is waiting. You blink. They're real. The smugglers. You wave your arms like a madman. You shout. You jump up and down. No response. They're too far away. And so, obviously, you decide to ride an eagle. Because of course you do. You wrap the last meat bundle tightly, then tie yourself to it using every inch of vine rope you can find. This, you mutter, is very stupid. Then you lay flat on the bundle, arms tight, heart pounding like a battle drum. The rock swoops again. You scream, not out of fear, but to psych yourself up like a lunatic gladiator, and as the eagle grabs the bundle, you feel the sudden lift, the jolt, the dizzying surge of flight. You're airborne. You are actually flying. You cling to the bundle, wind tearing at your clothes, eyes watering as the island drops away beneath you. The rocks beats its wings like thunderclaps, climbing toward the cliffs, and in the distance, the smugglers finally spot you. Cue? Mass confusion. They run back and forth, pointing, yelling. One guy definitely drops a cup. The rock lands, awkwardly, and when it lets go, you hit the ground with a bounce and a moan. You're dizzy, bruised, and possibly missing a tooth, but alive, and still gripping your diamond-stuffed bag like it's your childhood teddy bear. The smugglers surround you, wild-eyed. You were tied to the bait, one says, blinking. Yes. You wheeze. On purpose? Yes. Quirky fact. In some variations of this story, Sinbad never admits this was his idea, probably out of shame. But here you are, playing it straight and owning it like a legend. They take you in, feed you, give you water, dates, even a thin cloak. You tell them about the Cyclops, the cannibals, the snakes. Their eyes go wide. Sinbad, one whispers. You're cursed. Probably, you say, mouth full of honey-soaked bread. The smugglers are sharp-eyed, sunburnt, and a little shifty, but they know value when they see it, especially the value of a man covered in dirt, bird droppings, and diamonds. One of them, a thin man named Jalil, offers a deal. You ride back with us to the coast. We take a small share. You live. Everyone wins. You nod. No birds this time? No birds. You shake on it. The journey back takes a week. You travel inland first, through forests filled with spices, trees oozing sap that smells like cinnamon and smoke. You pass ruins choked in moss, old wells filled with frogs and rumors. Jalil points out landmarks. That hill is shaped like a sleeping lion. That grove grows cloves and ghosts. At one stop, they trade a sack of peppercorns for fresh horses. At another, you sleep beside a waterfall haunted by glow-in-the-dark toads. At least, Jalil says they glow. You're too tired to check. Eventually, you reach the port, dusty, hot, buzzing with trade. And there, at last, is the sea. You inhale the salty air like a man just released from prison. You've survived snake valleys, giant birds, storm wrecks, and culinary cannibals. You're not just Sinbad, you're Sinbad squared. One last thing before boarding the boat. You visit the market, just to look. You pass spice stalls, silk tents, perfume sellers with trays of frankincense and rose oil, and then, like fate teasing you, you spot a cage. Inside, a mynah bird, the exact kind you loaded on your first ship. It looks at you, tilts its head, and says, "Never again." You stare. Farid would love this. You board the smuggler's ship at dawn. Your clothes barely holding together, your sandals mismatched, your beard a philosophical statement. But your bag of diamonds? That's pristine. You keep it under your robe like a baby bird, shiny, fragile, and not to be trusted with anyone who smells even slightly of ambition. The ship isn't fancy, but it's sturdy. A wide-bellied dhow, sails patched with different-colored cloth like a quilt stitched by a mad tailor. Jalil and his crew keep things simple. Spices in the hold, dried fish in the barrels, and gossip on the wind. You try to stay useful, mending sails, coiling rope, even catching a flying fish that unfortunately slaps you in the face and escapes. It's a good laugh. You don't mind. The wind is steady, the food bland but edible. And for once, things seem calm. Too calm. On the third morning, a fog rolls in, thick white, silent. You can't see more than a few feet ahead. The ocean turns ghostly, all soft creaks and distant bird calls. You lean over the railing, thinking about hot tea, warm slippers, and maybe opening a quiet carpet shop somewhere far from anything with teeth or feathers. Then a shout cuts through the mist. A lookout screams, "Shore!" But it's not just any shore. The ship glides out of the fog like a whisper, and you see a coastline lined with statues. Towering, worn by wind and time, stone figures, 15 feet tall, standing in rows like ancient guards. Most are crumbling. One is missing a head, another leans sideways like it's deep in thought. The ship anchors. Jalil is nervous. "This isn't on any map," he mutters. "You volunteer to scout ahead, because apparently you haven't learned a single thing." You and 2 others row to shore, stepping onto sand that sparkles strangely in the morning light. The place is silent. Too silent. Even the birds have chosen not to bother. You walk between the statues, noticing the intricate carvings, eyes made of black glass, hands clutching what look like broken swords, lips parted like they were mid-prayer. Symbols cover the bases. Circular, geometric, unreadable. Historians still argue whether stories like these were inspired by ruins of actual lost cities. Places like Petra, Mahabalipuram, or ancient Swahili ports now swallowed by jungle and sand. At the edge of the clearing, you find the entrance to a building, or rather, a temple. Its pillars are cracked, but still upright. A dome, half collapsed, lets in strips of light. Inside, darkness. A pedestal, a pile of bones. You don't run, because frankly, bones have lost their intimidation factor by now. What does make your blood chill is the writing above the doorway. You don't understand the language, but you do recognize the symbol. A one-eyed face, just like the Cyclops. "Nope," says one of the crewmen. "Nope, nope, nope." You agree. You leave. As you're rowing back, you look at the statues again. Some of them are tilted, not by erosion, but by something big, something that moved past them. You climb back aboard and tell Jalil everything. His response? "We sail now." Everyone moves fast. Sails are hoisted, anchors pulled. You drift back into the fog, hearts pounding. No one speaks for an hour. Then Jalil breaks the silence with a joke. "If you ever write a book, Sinbad, don't include that place. Some stories are better not told." Quirky historical fact. Sailors from Southeast Asia and East Africa shared similar taboos. Entire islands considered off-limits, cursed by storms or guarded by spirits. Maps sometimes marked them with a skull, or just left them blank altogether. By sunset, the fog lifts. You've left the statues behind. But the ocean has other ideas, because now another storm. This one builds slowly. Clouds creep in like bruises. The wind groans through the rigging. Waves slap the hull with rising force. You and Jalil lock eyes. "Not again," you whisper. The sea, it seems, has a sense of humor. That night, the storm hits hard. Lightning forks across the sky. The mast cracks. Water pours onto the deck like a waterfall of doom. You bail with buckets, with boots, with your hands. You tie yourself to the railing so you don't get washed away. You think of Baghdad, of Farid, of that mynah bird in the market. You promise yourself you'll never do this again. The next morning, your arms are jelly. The crew is soaked, sleep-deprived, and traumatized, but you're alive. The ship didn't break. And in the distance, land, real, solid, familiar-looking land. You approach cautiously. Fishermen in tiny boats wave you in. You dock. It's a trading port on the edge of the kingdom of Serendib. Lush, welcoming, full of spices and sweet milk and people who don't immediately want to eat you. You've made it. Barely. Jalil and his crew part ways with warm handshakes and a small cut of your diamonds. You offer them more. Jalil refuses. "You earned those the hard way." You nod. "'Cause you did. You step off the ship and onto the docks of Serendib with all the grace of a seasick goat. Your legs wobble. Your clothes are a tapestry of salt stains, bird droppings, and threadbare dignity. You're sunburned in weird geometric patterns. But you're alive. And, more importantly, you've still got the diamonds. The air here is thick with cinnamon and cardamom. Palm trees sway over rooftops tiled in red and gold. Traders shout from stalls draped in silks. Perfume hawkers waft rosewater under your nose before you can even blink. You breathe it all in, overwhelmed, overstimulated, underwashed. A well-dressed merchant approaches. You look traveled. You smile with cracked lips. You could say that, with the last of your strength. You secure lodging in a small inn with paper-thin walls and collapse onto a cot filled with straw and mystery. You sleep for a full day, maybe 2. Time becomes irrelevant when your dreams are just highlight reels of near-death experiences. When you wake, things are different. You eat warm bread dipped in honey. You bathe twice. You even visit a barber who looks at your hair, sighs in despair, and then fixes your face with the patience of a monk. Now you look like a person again. Time to sell those diamonds. You visit the local jewel bazaar, an actual architectural marvel carved into stone, with an open roof that lets in sunlight filtered through hanging silk banners. Merchants sit cross-legged on velvet carpets, their trays glittering with rubies, sapphires, and gems you can't even name. You unwrap your prize. The crowd goes quiet. Your stones, raw, sharp, and dusted with rock feathers, gleam like condensed lightning. You're swarmed. Offers come pouring in. Gold, silver, ivory, even camels. One particularly dramatic trader offers his eldest daughter and a small boat. You take a breath, you smile, you wait, because you've learned one thing by now: never sell to the first guy who throws a camel at you. Eventually, you make a deal. Not just any deal, the kind of deal that makes people whisper your name long after you leave. You exchange the diamonds for gold, gems, and rare textiles, and, for reasons you're still unclear about, a crate of medicinal opium and a parrot that only speaks in sarcastic riddles. Historians still argue whether the opium trade was truly as open in Serendib during this time. But there's no question about the parrots. Those things have always been drama queens. Your name spreads fast. Soon, you're invited to private dinners. Scholars, nobles, and traders all want to hear your story. You embellish a little. Maybe the Cyclops had 2 heads now. Maybe the cannibals used golden forks. It doesn't matter. They love it. Eventually, word reaches the palace. An invitation arrives. You're to appear before the king of Serendib. This isn't just any king. This is the kind of monarch who drinks spiced rosewater from jade cups and walks barefoot on silk rugs. His palace overlooks the sea and glitters with mosaic tiles arranged to resemble constellations. You stand before him, freshly bathed, cloaked in fine linen, your beard oiled with something that smells like cinnamon and power. The king leans forward. "Sinbad, is it?" You bow low. "Tell me your story." And so you do. You tell him about the storms, the island of the Cyclops, the jungle cult, the Diamond Valley, the Eagle Ride. You even mention the bird droppings. The court listens, spellbound. Even the peacocks on the balconies seem to pause mid-strut. When you finish, the king claps his hands once. "You are either a great liar," he says, "or a very lucky fool." You grin. "Both, perhaps." He laughs. "Then I will make you my guest." You are given quarters in the palace. Cool, tiled rooms with low cushions, hanging lanterns, and a courtyard filled with lemon trees. You're fed like a royal, bathed like a sultan, dressed like a poet who's just inherited a spice fleet. One morning, the king sends for you again. "I want you to stay," he says. "Advise me, entertain me, show my court how a man lives when he's seen monsters and survived." You hesitate. It's tempting. It really is. But Baghdad calls to you. You dream of the Tigris, of old streets, of friends who may not believe a word, but will still pour you tea and call you mad. The king nods. "Then allow me to send you home with honor and with gifts. Carpets, perfumes, pearls, a robe stitched with gold thread, a servant to carry your things, a scribe to document your story, and a box carved from sandalwood that holds, quite casually, a single flawless ruby the size of a pigeon egg. Quirky aside, rubies from ancient Serendib, modern-day Sri Lanka, were famed across the ancient world. Even Marco Polo once wrote of their brilliance, though he didn't, to our knowledge, receive his as a parting gift for surviving snake eagles. You bow, you thank him, and then you begin your journey back. Your return journey begins not with fanfare, but with a silent sunrise and the creak of sails. The king of Serendib insists on sending you off like a diplomat. You don't argue. A royal escort accompanies you to the harbor, a procession of guards, servants, and musicians who play flutes that sound like birds learning to whistle. Your robes shimmer. Your beard is braided. You've never looked so much like a man who shouldn't be left alone with a cursed map. The ship is immaculate, sturdy, well-sailed, and loaded with gifts. Ivory combs, silk bolts, jars of saffron, sweet dates preserved in rose syrup, and a small decorative elephant carved from amber. It has tiny emerald eyes. You name it Mahmoud. He rides beside you in a velvet-lined crate like a silent co-captain. You set sail with a handful of loyal men, including the scribe, an annoyingly enthusiastic man named Nabal, who insists on documenting every sneeze you produce as evidence of Sinbad's resilience. The wind is kind. The sea, for once, doesn't hate you. You fall into a rhythm. Meals of flatbread and goat cheese, sunsets like orange lanterns melting into the horizon, and nights spent staring at stars that don't judge you for poor life choices. But peace never lasts. 3 days in, the weather changes. Not a storm this time? No, that would be expected. Instead, it's the heat, an oppressive, suffocating furnace of sun that turns the deck into a frying pan and your robes into a wool straitjacket. The crew starts murmuring about sea devils who cook sailors alive. One man swears he saw a fish burst into flames. Nabil tries to write poetry about it. You suggest he write about shade instead. On day 4, you spot land, not a city, not a village, just a long, flat coastline with a single structure, a tower made of dark stone, rising like a finger pointing at heaven, or warning you not to come any closer. Naturally, you approach it, because what's the worst that could happen? Don't answer that. You anchor in the shallows and wade ashore with 2 crewmen. The beach is littered with driftwood, bones, and rusted metal that might once have been swords. The tower stands silent. No windows, no door, just a crack where the stone has split near the base. You peer inside, darkness, and silence, and a smell, musty, ancient, like dust soaked in secrets. You step inside. The walls are covered in carvings, rows of symbols spiraling upward, images of ships, birds, stars, and something that looks suspiciously like a man being eaten by a vine. Your footsteps echo. You feel watched. But there's nothing there, until the whisper, soft, cold, just behind your ear. You spin around. Nothing. The crew bolts. You don't blame them. You follow. Back on the ship. Everyone agrees. We sail now. No arguments. As you leave, a wind rises. Cool, strange, and smelling faintly of cinnamon and smoke. It pushes your ship faster than expected, almost like the island wants you gone. Historians still debate whether towers like these existed along forgotten trade routes. Some claim they were watchposts. Others say they marked places sailors weren't meant to stay. Ever. You continue on, navigating the narrow straits between rocky isles and coral reefs that gleam like knives just beneath the water's surface. You pass fishing villages where people wave from stilt huts. You trade a bolt of silk for fresh mangoes and a clay jug of coconut wine so strong it erases memories by the sip. One afternoon, a pod of dolphins follows your ship for miles. They leap and splash like they're laughing. Nabal tries to name them all. You name one lunch just to scare him. Then finally you see it. Baghdad, minarets on the horizon. Dome roofs catching the sun like polished turquoise. The scent of spice markets riding the wind as if your city couldn't wait to smell itself again. You laugh. You weep a little. You look down at Mahmud the elephant and whisper, "We're home." Your ship docks to cheers and shouts. Word has spread. Somehow, maybe one of the traders passed along your tale. Maybe your last barber had a loud mouth. Maybe Nabil hired a town crier on the sly. Doesn't matter. Because now a crowd is forming. Children climb crates for a glimpse. Old men stroke their beards in approval. A woman throws you a garland of flowers that hits you square in the face. And at the front of it all, Farid. Yes, Farid. Alive. Missing a shoe. And holding a coconut with a straw in it like nothing happened. He hugs you with the force of a sandstorm. "Sinbad!" he yells. "You'll never believe what happened after the bird dropped you." You grin. We'll trade stories, over wine, and food. A lot of food. That night, you feast. Pomegranate stew, spiced lamb, flatbread the size of a kite, wine poured into silver cups. The room is warm, full of laughter and steam and the clatter of plates. You tell your tale. Some parts you exaggerate. Some you downplay. Some, like the Whispering Tower, you skip entirely. And through it all, people listen, because you are Sinbad, the man who left with hope, returned with scars, and lived to tell the tale. Again, the days after your return pass in a blur of comfort, curiosity, and just a touch of paranoia. People greet you like a hero. Shopkeepers offer you figs and fresh dates just for walking past. Strangers stop you on the street to ask if it's true you fought a snake the size of a ship. You reply, "Well, it was a big snake," and keep walking. There are murals going up now. One of them shows you riding a bird backwards while tossing diamonds into the wind. Not accurate, but flattering. Still, you can't shake it. That quiet hum of unease, not from anything out there, but from within. After so much danger and wonder, the safety of home feels strangely loud. Too still. Too safe. You find yourself ducking when pigeons flap too close, or flinching when someone says, "feathers," and the gifts. Oh, the gifts. You're rich again. Gold coins spill from silk pouches. Spices sit in ornate jars lined up like trophies. And of course, there's Mahmud, the carved amber elephant, who now resides on your writing table like a smug little mascot. But what now? You try settling in. Really? You buy a bigger house. You install a marble fountain that trickles with rose water. You pay 3 musicians to play soft melodies while you eat breakfast. You even host a poetry evening. Nabil comes, of course. He recites a 4-minute poem about your left sandal. People clap. You consider fleeing the city. And then one day, a letter arrives. No sender. Just a perfect white scroll with a crimson seal bearing the mark of the Caliph. You open it slowly. The invitation is elegant, but simple. His Majesty, Harun al-Rashid, requests your presence at court. No reason given. No date specified. Because when he asks, you go. You dress carefully. Nothing too flashy, but still regal. A robe dyed in indigo, a sash of gold thread. Mahmud, of course, stays behind to guard the fruit tray. The palace is a marvel. Marble halls echo with soft footfalls. Lamps hang from chains like glowing fruit. Peacocks strut across tiled courtyards, clearly aware that they're paid more than the guards. You're brought into a vast hall where the Caliph sits on a raised dais, his eyes sharp but amused. He's flanked by advisors, poets, generals, and, curiously, a man holding a lute who seems to be napping mid-strum. "Sinbad," the Caliph says. "Just your name, but heavy with meaning." You bow deeply, Your Majesty. "I've heard your tale. he says. It sounds like something out of the 1001 Nights. You glance at the court scribe, who shrugs. I'd like you to tell it, the caliph says. Here, tonight, all of it. The court settles. Even the peacocks hush. And you begin. You tell the story of the second voyage, from the moment you were lured back to sea, to the bird, the diamonds, the tower, and the return. You embellish. Of course. The Cyclops now speaks terrible poetry. The jungle cult chants your name. The rock bird is called Kevin. The court loves it. At one point, the caliph leans forward. And you rode this bird? Clung to its leg. You clarify. Still, he murmurs. Madness. Survival, you say, and he chuckles. When you finish, the court erupts into applause. The lute player wakes up just long enough to strum a victory chord. The caliph smiles. You may go, but return soon. I sense you've got more madness left in you. You take that as the highest compliment. Outside, the stars are just beginning to peek through the evening haze. You walk home through quiet streets, the cool air brushing your face, your mind still full of feathers, stones, and the whisper of the tower. Baghdad is peaceful for now, but you're not done, and neither is the sea. Quirky aside, did you know medieval Baghdad had streetlights powered by oil lamps and water clocks that chimed the hours with little mechanical birds? Wild, right? The city wasn't just wise, it was whimsical. Back at home, you sit on your roof, sipping sweet tea, watching the moon reflect off the Tigris. You tell yourself you'll rest. Just for a little while, maybe a week, maybe 2. And then, well, there are other islands, other monsters, other towers full of whispers. You lean back on a pillow. Mahmud watches you with silent judgment. You smile, because somehow, despite everything, crashes, creatures, curses, you're still curious. Historians still argue whether Sinbad the sailor was one man, many men, or simply a legend stitched together from sea shanties and survival tales. But one thing's for certain. The stories refuse to die. Just like you. You try to stay put. Honestly, you do. You sleep on satin sheets, sip cardamom coffee in the courtyard, and spend hours watching cats fight over fish bones outside your kitchen window. You even host a small dinner for traders from Basra. It's civilized, quiet, safe, and utterly intolerable. There's only so much leisure a man like you can take. One morning, you catch yourself arguing with Mahmud the elephant figurine over which fruits pair best with goat cheese. That's when you know. It's time. Again. Your old sea chest is already waiting in the corner, as if it knew you'd break. You fill it with essentials. Maps, compass, dried rose petals for luck, and of course, your best silk head wrap, dyed the color of sea foam. Baghdad bids you farewell with reluctant applause, and one very dramatic hug from Nabil, who insists on giving you a parting gift, a poem he wrote about your right eyebrow. You pretend to read it. He pretends not to notice. This time, you head north. You've heard whispers. Traders speak of a caravanserai deep in the mountain valleys, where ships travel inland by river, and strange goods pass hands in absolute silence. They call it the gray market, though no one agrees whether that refers to its color or its morality. Your journey starts on horseback, a winding ride through dusty roads and almond groves. You pass cities of carved stone, each older than the last, their gates marked with symbols you half remember from that whispering tower. One scholar offers to trade you a scroll in exchange for Mahmud. You politely decline and increase your pace. Eventually, you reach the foothills, and then the river. It's wide, too wide. It gleams like molten silver under the sun, and along its banks stand boats shaped like crescent moons. One of them is captained by a woman named Yasmin, who says nothing the first 3 days except, "Don't touch the tiller." You like her immediately. The boat glides. Mountains rise around you like sleeping giants. Waterfalls trickle from stone mouths high above. Birds with neon feathers dart from branch to branch, their calls echoing through the canyon. The air smells of moss and mystery. Yasmin hums sea shanties under her breath. None you recognize, but all hauntingly familiar. You spot ruins along the banks, broken archways, sunken temples, stone steps that lead to nothing. Who lived here, you ask? She shrugs. They didn't leave forwarding addresses. On the 5th night, you dock. The gray market awaits. It's not what you imagined. No tents, no shouting vendors, no smoke, no chaos. Instead, a silent village of wood and woven silk, nestled in a hidden cove between cliffs. The stalls are hushed. Transactions occur through hand gestures, glances, and occasionally the flick of a silver coin. No one speaks unless spoken to. You're guided to a shaded pavilion where traders show their goods. Spices harvested from insects' wings, glassware etched with constellations, fish that glow in total darkness. One man sells sand that sings when warmed by fire. You trade wisely, you keep quiet, you buy nothing cursed, hopefully. Then you see it, a map, ancient, fragile, drawn on what appears to be bird skin. It shows islands you've never heard of, with notes written in a script that makes your eyes water. One is labeled simply, "The Island That Eats Men." Another, "Sea of Sleeping Winds." You have to go. You haggle with a silent trader using coins, fabric, and finally, Mahmoud. It hurts, but the map is worth it. Yasmin's eyebrows raise when you return without the elephant. Couldn't resist, could you? You shrug. He wanted a change of scenery. The return trip is faster, the current working in your favor. And in the back of your mind, the new map whispers possibilities, places too wild to be charted, monsters too big to be real, treasures too strange to be believed. One night, under a sky smeared with stars, Yasmin speaks. I've seen one of those islands. You look at her. Which one? The one with the sleeping winds. She says. You won't like it. Why not? No one talks there. Not even the air. You make a note. Bring extra blankets. Historians still argue whether the gray market truly existed. Some claim it was a metaphor for barter economies under imperial trade bans. Others say it was a real place, hidden deliberately by its own merchants, only appearing to those who traded honestly and asked no questions. You believe both. Back in Baghdad, the streets feel too straight. The people, too loud. So, naturally, you prepare your next departure. This time by sea. Your ship is smaller, sleeker, designed for speed and slipperiness. The crew is new. No Nabil, no Farid, just strangers with strong arms and quiet eyes. The map is mounted inside your cabin, pinned to the wall with tiny ivory tusks. You sleep beneath it. You dream of coral cities and ships that sail upside down. You dream of elephants. You dream of home. But you don't stay. Not yet. There's still one more voyage to make. You wake to gulls, not the noisy city kind that beg for crumbs and fight over fish heads, but sleek, silent ones with black-tipped wings and eyes like polished onyx. They circle your new ship as if inspecting it, approving it. Good omen. The crew sets sail at dawn. You're heading into the Sea of Sleeping Winds. Yes, the one Yasmin warned you about. But maps are stubborn things. They whisper of hidden lands and quiet terrors. And you, poor fool, always listen. The first week is smooth, too smooth. The sea is like a mirror, windless. The sails sag like laundry left out in the rain. You move by rowing, and the crew begins to murmur. Not about mutiny, just unease. One night, you pass through a fog so thick it feels alive. When it clears, you find you're not alone. Another ship, no sails, no crew, just drifting. Your first mate, a grizzled man named Harith, volunteers to board it. He returns with a single item, a violin strung with hair, not horsehair. "Let's not ask questions," he says, placing it in a chest. You don't argue. 3 days later, your cook begins humming in his sleep. A slow, eerie tune. It matches the rhythm of the oars. The winds don't come back, but something else does. You reach a stretch of sea where the sky and water look exactly the same. Horizon? Gone. Up? Down? Optional? You navigate by instinct, by the shifting weight of the stars. And once, by the advice of a particularly smug parrot that appeared during breakfast and hasn't left since. Then land! No cheering, no cries of land ho, just an island rising like a dream from the stillness. It's made entirely of white sand, polished and glimmering, with trees that sway though there's no wind. The moment you set foot on it, every sound dies. No birds, no water, not even your own footsteps. The island of sleeping winds. Everything feels slowed. Your thoughts stretch like honey. The crew moves as if underwater. You try to speak, but your voice catches in your throat. Then you see them. Figures. Not quite people. Not quite shadows. Standing still, scattered around the trees, dressed in robes, faces blank, eyes closed. Sleeping? Praying? Dead? Historians still argue whether they were the remnants of a lost sect or the petrified remains of travelers who stayed too long. Some say they're guardians. Others, cursed victims of silence. You don't get close. Instead, you explore the island's edge. Behind a dune, you find something unbelievable. A ship, half buried in sand. Small, sleek, made entirely of obsidian, carved with symbols that match those on your tower map. Inside, nothing. No crew, no provisions. Just a seat, a lever, and a set of carved words. You don't read them aloud. You've learned. You take a rubbing of the symbols, carefully copying them to parchment. Then you leave, heart hammering. The silence presses on your ears like water. Back on your own ship, sound returns, slowly. First the clank of rigging, then the creak of wood. Finally, the parrot, squawking about pomegranates. The crew doesn't ask what happened. They don't want to know. You leave the island behind. But the silence clings to you. For days, no one speaks. Then, one evening, a breeze, soft, tentative, but real. The sails fill. The ship moves forward without oars for the first time in weeks. You cheer, quietly. The crew begins to laugh again. The cook whistles off-key. Even the parrot tries to sing, though it mostly sounds like someone choking on lentils. Still, you don't sleep well. That night, you dream of the silent ones, standing at the edge of the trees, eyes now open, watching you leave. You sail on, and then, on the 6th night, you see the whirlpool. It glows. That's the first thing. A soft, greenish light from beneath the waves, spinning slowly, gently, as if inviting you in. You do not accept the invitation. You steer wide, but currents pull at the hull. The compass spins wildly. The stars vanish. You shout orders, but the wind changes direction with every command. It's as if the sea is laughing. And then, peace. You're out of it. Somehow. No whirlpool, no glow. Just stars and sky and the familiar smell of salt. You check the map. The parchment has changed. New symbols have appeared, ones that weren't there before. You feel the chill in your bones before the parrot even squawks. The island marked as Sea of Sleeping Winds now has a line drawn through it. As if it's closed. You take the hint, turn your ship toward a new heading. There's another island marked in red ink. The Forgotten Forge. You wonder what that means. Your crew begins to whisper again. Horeth swears he saw a giant hand rising from the sea. The cook insists the parrot speaks in riddles. You're just glad something's moving. This voyage is different. No trade goods, no goal of riches. You're chasing questions now. Why did the tower whisper your name? What was the obsidian ship built for? And why do the winds feel like they're watching you? You chart a course to the next mystery. The Forgotten Forge. Sounds cozy, right? Like a place with glowing embers, old tools, and maybe a grumpy blacksmith with stories to tell. Spoiler, it's not. The sea leading there is warm, not pleasantly tropical, more like soaking in a giant's bathwater. Steam rolls off the surface in slow waves, and the sky turns a weird copper hue. The sun looks bloated, like it's had too much honey. Your skin prickles. You drink more water. You sweat through your silks, and then your compass dies. Not breaks, just stops. The needle quivers in every direction like it's panicking. Horath tries to fix it with some copper wire and sailor spit. Doesn't help. You navigate the old way, by stars and instinct. You trust the map. Mostly, it got you through the silent island, after all. And then you see it, the Forge, a volcanic island rising from the sea like a beast's back. No vegetation, no beaches, just black rock, molten cracks, and smokestacks that belch fire like an angry kitchen god. You get closer, and your ship creaks, not from wind or waves, but from heat. Even the parrot shuts up. You dock in a natural harbor carved into obsidian cliffs. The air tastes like rust and cinnamon. Everything's oddly mechanical. You swear the rocks are humming. You go ashore with a small party. Harith, the cook, a sailor named Layla, who claims her great-grandfather married a volcano spirit. She seems comfortable. The rest of you? Not so much. The first thing you see is metal. Everywhere. Not swords or shields, but gears, chains, coils, wheels, giant contraptions rusting in silence. You pass a massive armature that looks like it once lifted entire ships. Another structure appears to be a bellows the size of your house, all abandoned, but intact. Then you find the statues, tall, humanoid, carved not from stone but bronze. Their faces are blank, but their hands are precise, each holding tools, a hammer, a measuring rod, a pair of calipers, engineers, artisans, guardians. You touch one, it's warm. Historians still argue about the purpose of this place. Some say it was the final workshop of the Jinn, forging objects of power for ancient kings. Others claim it was a prison, a labor camp where bound spirits smithed for centuries, until the magma cooled and the world forgot them. You believe both. Obviously, inside the mountain, tunnels await. Not natural caves, but built passages, lined with metal ribs, floors paved in hexagonal tiles, walls etched with schematics too complex to understand. You walk carefully. Everything echoes, even your thoughts. Eventually, you reach a great hall, a forge, a real one, big enough to cook a dragon. There's no fire now, just a deep pit with runes along the rim and a massive chain hanging from the ceiling. You can't tell if it once held something in, or kept something out. Beside the pit lies a skeleton, humanoid, but taller than any man should be. Its fingers are wrapped around a set of blueprints burned into a thin sheet of gold. You don't take the sheet. You take a rubbing. The plans show something spherical, mechanical, and, judging by the notes, alive, or at least capable of thought. You don't understand it, but Layla gasps when she sees the sketch. "That's no machine," she whispers. "That's an egg." You return to the ship. The parrot greets you with, "Forge is a bad word," and refuses to elaborate. That night, while anchored in the Black Bay, the sea bubbles, tiny ripples spread in concentric rings. No wind, no moonlight, just steam and glowing waves. Then something surfaces, just for a moment, a disc. Smooth, metallic, the size of a banquet table. It hovers an inch above the water, spins once, then descends without a splash. Everyone sees it, no one mentions it. The next morning, your rudder is covered in a thin sheen of soot. You leave, quietly, back on open water, Things cool down. Literally. The sky returns to its pale blue. The parrot resumes its pomegranate obsession. You hang the forge rubbing in your cabin. It hums sometimes. You try not to look at it directly. You start plotting your next stop. But the map is acting weird again. The forgotten forge isn't crossed out like the silent island. It's glowing, faintly. A red dot pulses beside its name. You wonder if you've activated something. Great! You're followed for 2 days. Not by a ship, by a shadow. It trails behind you underwater, visible only when the light's right. You see it from the stern. Sleek. Fast. Shaped like a serpent with wings. It never surfaces. Just stalks. Then vanishes. The cook starts burning sage in the galley. Harith prays to the sea goddess of rusted chains. Layla draws symbols in charcoal on the deck. You find yourself sleeping less. Instead, you chart a new course. East, toward a stretch of ocean labeled simply, "No stars here." Sounds like a vacation, right? Still, you go, because something on that island, the forge, woke up, and you're starting to think it knows your name. The stars vanish on the 5th night. You're not surprised. After all, the map said no stars here. But still, it's unnerving. At first, it's just a dimming. The North Star fades. The familiar constellations blur like smudged ink. Then, nothing. A velvet black sky. Perfectly blank. The sea reflects it. An endless sheet of ink. You light lanterns. They flicker. Even flame seems reluctant in this place. Welcome to the starless sea. Navigation. Useless. Your compass spins again. The crew is tense, hands always near hilts. Voices lowered to whispers. The cook swears the water smells different. Less salty. More metallic. Then, sometime around what should be midnight, the drums begin. Not from your ship, from beneath the sea. They're slow at first. 1 beat every 30 seconds. Deep, like thunder muffled in clay. A rhythm older than time. Not music, not warning. Something else. Heartbeat, Layla whispers. Pale. You ask of what? She doesn't answer. Historians still argue whether the starless sea ever existed. Some describe it as a mythological metaphor, an allegory for grief or madness. Others, fewer, say it's real, a realm where the sky forgets itself and time turns sideways. You're beginning to believe the latter. On the 2nd day in the starless waters, a storm hits, but not a normal one. Lightning without clouds. Forks of blue fire ripple across the black sky like cracks in a bowl. No thunder, no rain, just light, dancing silently. Then your crew vanishes. Not all at once, just scattered. One here, another there. No splash, no cry. Just gone. You count heads constantly. At first 23, then 20, then 17. You post guards, tie ropes to wrists. Nothing helps. It takes you 6 hours to realize they're not gone. They're back, but not quite. Harith returns with a compass he didn't leave with. It points downward. The cook returns whispering to himself in a language that sounds suspiciously like backward Persian. Layla doesn't return at all. You don't ask questions. You keep sailing. Eventually, you reach the center. You know it's the center because your ship stops. Not crashes, not halts. It stops mid-motion, as if suspended in sap. And there it is, a structure. Not an island, not a temple. Something in between. Rising from the sea like it was always there. A spiral tower made of obsidian and coral and bones. No sails could bring you here by accident. This place chose you. You disembark. The steps are slick but solid. You climb with trembling legs, your sword drawn, though you know steel means nothing here. At the top, a mirror, not glass, liquid metal, still circular, framed by a serpent eating its tail. You step closer. The mirror doesn't reflect your face. It reflects you. Yes, but elsewhere. Another sea. Another ship. You, with different scars, older eyes, a crew you don't recognize, and the map in your hands, glowing with more than ink. The image changes. You see yourself at the forge, holding the golden blueprint. Then, you, on the island of sleeping winds, speaking to the silent figures. Then, you, drowning in the whirlpool you escaped days ago. Then, you, as a boy, climbing rigging on your very first ship. Then, you, staring back from the mirror. The mirror blinks. You stagger backward. When you look again, the mirror is gone. In its place, a scroll. It floats mid-air, suspended by nothing. You take it, because you have to, not because you want to. It's written in a language you almost understand. Not because you speak it, but because your bones remember it. Ancient sailor's tongue, djinn glyphs, secret cartographer's ink. It says, roughly, third door now unlocked. You don't know what the first two were. You descend, back on the ship. The crew is asleep. All of them. Even Harith. Even the parrot. The lanterns are lit, but don't cast shadows. You weigh anchor, but the ship moves before you command it. It sails up. Not a metaphor. The sea becomes sky. The stars flicker back to life. Though they're wrong. Out of order. As if rearranged by a child with a celestial crayon. You pass through clouds, real clouds, and enter a stratum of air where light itself seems tired. The ship groans. Your head spins. Then, thud. You land. On water. Not in it. On it. A vast, flat, silver lake, stretching forever, with towers rising from the surface like teeth. The parrot wakes and says, "Well, you broke it." Helpful. You unroll the scroll. A new map forms on it. Without ink, just glowing impressions. You're being pulled toward a location labeled the machine that sleeps. You decide not to fight it. Something is waking, and it's connected to you. Deeply, hopelessly. Back in your cabin, the old tower map, the one from the start, has changed again. There's now a red circle around your own location. A pulse. As if your voyage has stopped being about finding places and started being about awakening them. It's the lake that hums first. A low vibration beneath the ship, like distant harp strings plucked underwater. The crew stirs but doesn't speak. The parrot mutters something about charging coils and warranty void if submerged, which you choose to ignore. You stand at the bow, scroll in hand, eyes fixed on the horizon. There, barely visible, is the machine. You approach slowly. The water doesn't ripple. The sails don't flap. Even the air feels paused, like the world's been holding its breath for centuries, waiting for someone like you to knock. It's huge. Not big statue, huge. Continent, huge. A titanic figure half submerged in the lake, made of iron and amber and jade, sprawled across the mirrored surface like a sleeping god machine. One leg curled, one arm raised toward the sky, and a circular eye in the center of its chest that pulses faintly, like it's dreaming. You dock beside its ribcage, climb a ladder made from what looks suspiciously like linked femurs. Each step hums beneath your feet, not mechanically, but musically, as if the machine is listening to your approach. At the top, a door, hexagonal, covered in symbols you first saw back in the Whispering Tower. You press your palm to them. The door melts. Inside silence. And then a voice, not aloud, but inside your head. Welcome back. You pause. Not because it speaks, but because of what it says. Back? The machine's interior is cathedral-like, vast, vined in cables, lit by blue-green veins that pulse like breath. Everything's humming. Gently, almost soothingly. You wander through rooms that shift when you're not looking. One moment you're in a corridor of brass teeth, the next in a library of glass tablets. You see a version of yourself drawn in ink on a giant cylinder, labeled only Operator, Attempt 214. Historians still argue whether the legends of the sleeping machine point to an ancient power source, a celestial engine, or something more abstract, like memory itself. A device not for war or travel, but for continuity. A container for all the forgotten pieces of humanity. You think it might be all three? You reach the heart chamber. Floating at the center is a globe, a perfect sphere of water, hovering mid-air, inside which swirl storms, mountains, and tiny ships. It's Earth, not yours. Not exactly. A version, a memory, a failed attempt? There's a control panel. Though panel is a generous term. It's bones and wires, feathers and starlight, all woven into a console that somehow responds to thought more than touch. You place your hand on it. The sphere changes. You see cities that never were, wars that ended differently, whole oceans in places they shouldn't be, and in every variation, you, or some version of you, always near a ship, always following a map. You see the golden blueprint again? You see the gray market trader smile as he takes Mahmoud. You see Yasmin vanish into smoke. You see the island that ate men, digesting. Then finally, you see Baghdad? Your Baghdad. Your house. Your garden. The olive tree you planted as a boy. You realize what the machine is. A memory recycler. A dream engine. It doesn't create stories. It replays them. Wakes them. You're not the first Sinbad. You're not even the fifth. You're a role in a recursive epic, retold so often that reality bends to make room for it. The ship, the whirlpool, the elephant, the gray market. You! Patterns, always reawakening. You stagger back. The machine asks, without asking, do you wish to remember? You hesitate and whisper, yes. The world tilts. The ship is beneath you again. The lake is gone. You're in the sky, not flying, falling. You crash into waves that don't splash. They fold around you. When you open your eyes, you're in your cabin. The scroll? Gone. The map? Blank. Mahmoud on the table, smirking as usual. You step outside. Baghdad? Again. The olive tree. The fish market. Nabil's off-key singing. Did you dream it all? No. In your palm, the Whispering Tower's emblem, branded in gold. A reminder. You've seen the blueprint, and something is waiting. You do what anyone would do after tumbling through dream machines and sky lakes and recursive timelines. You go get breakfast. The bread vendor greets you like nothing's changed. You buy a sesame flatbread, extra crisp. You nod at the spice seller who always claims his cardamom can revive the dead. Everything smells the same, feels the same, but you're not the same. You carry too many maps in your head now, too many memories that feel borrowed. You know where the machine sleeps. You know what it showed you. And most dangerous of all, you remember the parts you weren't supposed to. Historians still argue whether Sinbad was one man or many. Some say the stories were a composite, a stitched-together epic passed down by sailors with wild imaginations and bad luck. But others, especially fringe theorists, suggest something far stranger. That Sinbad is a constant, a role, a repeating pattern in the sea of time. The name may change, the face, but the voyage stays. You're starting to believe them. The next morning, the door of your house is ajar. No one else notices. Inside, your belongings are just as you left them, but on the floor lies a new scroll, still warm, as though it was just finished. This one isn't a map. It's a message. It says, final coordinates received, awaiting vessel integrity check. All systems responsive. Initiate third voyage. You fold the scroll and tuck it beneath your belt. Back at the docks, your ship is waiting. A different one. Maybe sleeker? Older? Newer? It's hard to tell. It bears no name. Only a glyph on the prow. A symbol you saw deep inside the machine. A kind of eye, ringed by waves. Harith is there, wiping the deck, acting like he's been aboard all along. Yasmin stands at the helm, unreadable. Layla, who vanished in the starless sea, leans on the mast, alive and whole and whistling the tune from the gray market. She winks. Took you long enough. The crew boards without a word. They know. And then there's the parrot, now gold-feathered, blinking in Morse code. It screeches. Same story, new storm. You smile. This time, you're not afraid of forgetting, because the machine showed you the loop, and more importantly, it showed you the way out. But that's for the next voyage. For now, you take the helm. The wind stirs, the water parts, and you, eternal wanderer of strange tides, once again set sail, not for gold, not for glory, but to chase the impossible, a story with no end. And now the sails grow quiet. The sea flattens into stillness, a silver sheet under a velvet sky. The stars have stopped flickering, content at last, as if even they were listening. The hum of the machine fades into memory. You're back in your cabin now. The lantern swings gently overhead. Your hands, still calloused from rope and storm, rest quietly on a blanket that smells of salt and cedar. The ship creaks just a little, comfortably, like a house settling in for sleep. Outside, the parrot snores, loudly, off-key. Everything else is calm. All those strange lands, the cities lost to time, the whirlpools and sky lakes, the dreaming god machines, they're behind you now, or maybe ahead. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you made it through. You always do. That's the thing about stories like yours. They bend, they twist, they confuse and contradict. But they hold, they remember you, and they wait. So for now, take a breath. Let it out slowly. Feel your heartbeat match the rhythm of waves you can no longer see, but still trust to carry you forward. Let your thoughts drift, like the ship, across calm waters. You've earned the rest. And maybe, just maybe, when you dream tonight, you'll catch the scent of cinnamon and sea brine, and know, somewhere beyond the edges of sleep, your voyage continues. Good night, traveler.